I grew up on a 101-acre farm about a mile up the road from Finksburg Library. It was on what they called Horseshoe Bend Road at that time, but now it's Bollinger Road, about halfway between Deer Park Road and Old Westminster Pike. I grew up there, as did my father and his father before him. It was all good for a kid growing up on a farm. The only thing I didn't like, I didn't have other kids to play with because I was an only child, but my grandmother filled in. She taught me to jump rope and sew with a treadle sewing machine and pull taffy. And it was all good for kids growing up on a farm, but not so much for the adults. It was very hard work. On the farm we grew corn, hay, barley, wheat, oats. That was mainly for livestock feed. And there were pigs that were sold, and one was butchered each year. Cows, milk cows. The milk was separated in a cream separator, and the cream was sold to a dairy to make butter. My mother raised ducks and chickens, geese, turkeys. When I was little, if it wasn't grown and preserved and canned and butchered or squeezed from a cow, we didn't eat it, you know. When I was 11 or 12, I started to drive the farm tractor, so I would pull the baler and my father would be on the wagon catching the bales of hay. So I kind of liked to do that. But I think what impressed me as I look back on my growing up time and farm life is how self-reliant farmers were, and I guess they still are.
The Megan family really, I guess, has been 4 generations of us, and we were located in the Taylorsville area. And we actually had our wormseed distill in the Taylorsville area. For about roughly 50 years, we distilled there. Well, we had raised wheat, and corn, and of course wormseed, and then we had beef cattle, and then we raised, actually we done some truck farming. We raised sweet corn and taken that to Baltimore and Washington. We raised tomatoes. We taken that to Baltimore to the canning house. And we had really taken some of the produce to Baltimore and Washington both. When my dad, I mean, he started out, I think way back, they probably had horses in. And actually I got some pictures here where the horses, you know, were actually come in the still with horses at one time. And they started probably with the horses in the beginning, and they went more to the tractors, and you know, of course your combines and too. Or, I mean, you had the tractor pull the combine. Now you got a self-propelled combine, which we got later on too. I mean, then once you get farming in your blood, it just don't go. I mean, we grew up with it. I mean, that's part of being in your blood, I think. I'm still enjoying it, even though I live in Westminster.
We raise pumpkins, we raise sweet corn. I have some cattle that I raise for myself. The kids have 4-H projects there. We do vegetables, hay, straw, but majority of our stuff is the hay and the pumpkins. We don't raise near what we used to. We used to have 25 acres of pumpkins, and now we're down to about 8. But you know, it's still a lot of work, but I do other work during the day. I do building and remodeling during the day, and then do the farm on the weekends and nighttime, so it kind of takes up my whole day. I think it's become a lot more corporate or bigger. I mean, a lot of guys now, or if you're not farming 1,000 acres, you're really not farming for a living if you're not doing that much acreage, or you know, or 500 and some acres. But it doesn't seem like a small 50-acre farm can make it today with the prices of everything. It's kind of a way of life, and it's a way of life for a lot of people that live in this area, and I just kind of think you need to respect what they're doing, and I would rather see a lot more farms in my backyard than houses, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's the way I grew up, and I'd like it to stay that way for my kids.
My family, after the Civil War, actually moved into Finksburg area. A great-grandfather purchased some property there. I'm the fourth generation on that property. My sons are the fifth, and we just had our first granddaughter here in the area, so we're hopefully continue that. So we're a small farming operation in Finksburg. We raise corn, soybeans, hay, and Angus cattle. We probably farm what 10 people made a living on 50 years ago, and we can do it part-time. So that gets, with the equipment, the size of the equipment coming in, the technologies coming into agriculture, we can now do what 10 families made a living on, and we can do that part-time. You have to understand where you came from before you know where you're going, and I hope they don't lose the feeling of, tradition, what their forefathers did to get to where they are. I mean, it's very nice to jump into a $500,000 combine, and there's all the bells and whistles, and you can fly through the field at 7 miles an hour and harvest grain, and you're doing in, I said, in 5 minutes what it took them all day to do. But you need to know how it evolved. You need to know how that machine evolved, and what the purpose is, how it runs, what makes it tick and everything, so it can be set for maximum efficiency. So I hope that doesn't get lost. By 2040, I think the world's population is going to hit 9 billion people. How are they going to eat? Somebody's going to have to feed them. In the United States, where everybody used to have their own little sustainable farm, now we have about 2% of the population producing 80% of the crops, or producing 80% of the food, and this is almost a worldwide market that we're in. So you're looking at agriculture to feed the world.